All right, let's dive into something we all do literally every single day, but almost never actually think about: the hidden rules of how we talk. It turns out there's this whole fascinating, complex system running in the background of every chat you have.
I mean, really, stop and think about it for a second. When was the last time you actually spoke out loud the same way you'd write a formal email or a term paper? Yeah, the chances are pretty much never, right? There's this massive gap between language on the page and language in the air.
Okay, let's look at a really clear example. On one side, you've got this very proper written request. Could you please inform me of the correct procedure for this task? But what would you actually say? You'd say, so how do you do this? The difference isn't just that it's more casual, the whole structure is simpler, it's more direct, and it's built for a fast back and forth.
And you know, this really gets to the core of it all. It's a huge mistake to think that the way we talk is just a lazy or, wrong version of written language. It's not. It's a totally different system with its own brilliant logic, and it's perfectly designed for the high-speed, messy, interactive world of a live conversation.
So, what does this system actually look like? Let's break down the real building blocks of a conversation. We're going to look at some of the unique ways we put sentences together, things we all do constantly, probably without ever even noticing.
Okay, so check out how we handle questions. It's amazing. We have this whole toolkit of shortcuts. We use these little tags like right, not really to get information, but just to get a quick nod of agreement. We use indirect questions like, could you tell me, to be a bit more polite. And we even use plain old statements like, you're leaving now, where it's just our tone of voice that makes it a question. Each one is like a specialized tool for a specific social moment.
All right, here's a concept that sounds super technical, but I promise it's something we all do naturally. It's called fronting, and it's just a fancy word for when we grab a piece of a sentence and stick it right at the beginning to make it the star of the show.
And this shows it perfectly. So normally you might say, I've already read that book. But if your friend just mentioned that book, you'd almost instinctively say, that book I've already read. See what you did there? By fronting it, you put a big spotlight on that book, and it instantly connects to what was just said. It's a really powerful way to keep a conversation flowing.
And there are so many other little signatures of how we talk. We have our informal ways of quoting people like, she was like, no way. We use phrasal verbs all the time. We happily split our infinitives to actively participate. And we even give commands that sound like simple statements, like, you put the plates over there. All this stuff that would get a red line through it in an essay is pretty much the lifeblood of real conversation.
This quote really just nails it. Spoken language is functionally driven. It's all about function over form. It doesn't care about the old rigid rules as much as it cares about what works right here, right now, with the person you're talking to. And that idea of function leads us right to the next big question: why? So why did our spoken language develop all these specific quirks and rules? Well, it all comes down to the incredibly complicated things we're trying to do in every single conversation. We're managing information, we're navigating social politeness, and we're trying to express our own attitude about things, all at the same time in real time.
A huge part of this is just about making things easy for the listener to understand. And we do this without thinking. We tend to start with familiar info, the stuff the listener already knows. Then, at the very end of the sentence, we drop the new stuff, the punchline. This structure is like a natural spotlight, guiding our listeners' attention right where we want it to go.
And here's a really clever trick we use to manage that focus. Instead of just saying, we need a bigger garden, we might say something like, what we need is a bigger garden. It's a little thing called a split sentence, but it's a powerful tool that shifts the focus away from the person, we, and puts it right on the thing that's most important, the need for a bigger garden. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because grammar becomes a social tool. Politeness is literally baked right into how we form our sentences. What time is it is direct, it's efficient. But could you tell me the time? That's an indirect question, and it just softens the whole request. And then you get to these more complex forms that add a huge layer of diplomacy. We're constantly making these tiny grammatical adjustments to manage how we interact with people. And a huge part of showing our attitude comes down to these tiny but mighty words called modal verbs. Will, might, should, could. They are absolute power tools in a conversation. They let us signal how certain we are about something, whether it's just a possibility, a strong obligation, or maybe just a polite suggestion. All of that nuance gets packed into one little word. And this just goes to show you that spoken grammar is a living, breathing thing.
We've all heard that famous slogan, "I'm loving it." Now, an old-school grammar book would tell you that's wrong. Love is a state, not an action, so it can't have an ing on the end. But in conversation, we break that rule all the time to emphasize that a feeling is happening right now. The rules of speech evolve to meet what we need to express.
So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Spoken grammar isn't bad or sloppy grammar, it's different grammar. It's a highly sophisticated and efficient system that has been perfectly optimized for the incredibly tough job of real-time human interaction. It's built for clarity, for connection, and for social grace. So there you have it, a little peek behind the curtain at the hidden architecture of our daily chats. Now that you know about these unwritten rules, about fronting and information flow and all those little politeness tricks, the only question is this: will you ever be able to listen to a simple conversation the same way again?